Peace be upon you. Today's story is about a patient man and a woman who brings success and blessings. Revealed with the den of man, it is the story of the obstacle of the ungrateful woman. Let us begin. On the slopes of the mountains in the village of Basita, Kokiani was abandoned. Life was moving slowly. Like the Hatta River, its people were martyrs and kind-hearted people who rejoiced in the simplest things. In that village there lived Hashim, a man who was ascetic and had a good heart and a hard worker. He was a woodcutter who could only make a lawful living. His house was small and built of. Its roof is covered with mud and its walls are covered with tumbleweed, but Hashim's heart is not happy. One day, he used to say Thanksgiving every day, calling for dawn, and he used to take his old axe. He heads to the forest and returns that evening with a bundle of firewood and the village children. They promise him love for Baba Hashim, but they understand his patience and gratitude. His wife, Fatima, was a beautiful woman, but she was short-hearted. San had a sharp temper. She was complaining day and night about what kind of life this was. Other people's homes turn bitter and we are burning from the heat, filled with silk arrows. And if they do not have 3 dresses, and you fight the trees every day and do not change. Something in life, Hashim used to smile and say, Fatima, this is all temporary. Halal heels opened my parents to heaven. I thank God, but Fatima's heart was getting hard. Day after day, she envied the women of the village when she saw a new Hilya or a Hajra. Ursa saw her precious Zaina filled with grief and her heart filled with anger, one day. The tired Hashim called him back, and she threw the bread to him and said, I brought a bunch of fresh coffee. The house will be filled with smoke. For her and her first breath, Hashim said, the sky has blessed me with Fatima, thank God that we were able to bring al-Hatabi back. She said indignantly, thank you, thank you. This is the one who destroyed my life and that night. Hashim slept outside the room on a simple bed looking up to the sky and praying, O Lord, guide my wife and teach her gratitude. But inside, Fatima was looking at the sky and praying to a completely different supplication. O God, save me from this poor, tired, miserable life and give me something that will make me free from all of this. She didn't know he called her, but not in the way she wanted. The next day, Hashim went out into the forest as usual, but that day was different. The air after the rain was clear and the 100s dripped from the trees. The sound of his axe began to sound strange, as if the place wanted to say something. While he was working, he heard a sound that sounded like a groan. He immediately stopped and moved forward from behind the bushes to a rocky place. A wounded lion, bleeding from his mouth and breathing with difficulty. Her feet trembled. He smelled, but mercy was in his nature. He took out his cloak and approached with caution and bound the wound. Asad opened his eyes, and there was no trace of predation in them, with Samad Garib, Ulman, and Setafan Samad. Hashim looked at him for a moment and said, Bado, you are also from Kalk. No, come, I will take you with Moin. He took him carefully to a small khan that was used by an ancient man to bind cows. He cleaned the wound, covered it with an old blanket, and gave it to him. When Masan returned home, Fatima was angry and waited for him. She said, Where have you been? I have the filings of the past year. Shamoun told her kindly. Today was different. I found a wounded lion and brought him back. It is as if you saw a dawn in her face and said, Halsa has gone crazy, my lord, she is a predatory animal in this poorhouse. After people will start raising monsters, Shaman told Bado that he was very weak and on the verge of death. I couldn't let go. She said sarcastically, Your heart never beat for my happiness. But he kicked the savage animal's foot and made it stop with a snort. He knew that arguing was of no use. But he did not know that it was the creature that brought them into the forest. It is not just a wounded lion, but rather a test, fate, and decision that will change everything in the coming days. The noise was calm, but in Hashem's heart there was a strange anxiety that came out bitterly when he lost the small hut where the lion slept. The lion was still weak, but there was no fear in his eyes, as if he knew her by smell. This man was the turning point in his life. He gave her a whiff of pure milk mixed with the medicine, and he hugged a wound and a wound with which she would cry when she fell asleep. At the end of the night, he returned home tired, and she received Fatim's sharp looks and said, "Have you started to sleep with life now?" Shamoun told her kindly that he is suffering from weaning while he is single. "Tomorrow when he feels better I will take him back to the forest, and until then we will arrange food for him." Hashem Sham did not say anything after that, as he knew that his answers would be made up of words and blogs. The next few days were between Hashem's daily work and his revenues for Assad. The lion began to improve, but the strange thing was that he was calm and obedient. He did not roar or attack, but remained silent. It is as if he is suppressing his nature until the water. On the day of the water, Hashem entered the house, and she said, "Fatma with Hiddah." She came once today and said to her, "That is, we will marry you to the one who raises the lion. You made us return to the village," but Hashem did not want. As if he had not heard anything, he entered the room and took the milk he had saved and took it to the lion. Fatima began to be annoyed by his characteristic and his interest in that animal, and she began to fake her. Is this animal special and true? Will Hashem become a path of goodness in which there will be no place? During those days, strange things began to happen in the village, as there was a lot of theft at night. Sometimes the livestock celebrates and sometimes climbs the walls, but since the lion came near Beth Akim, no one dared to approach her house, and one night he caught a thief and said, "Let's go in to her house," but the eyes of the animal and Nak were shining like fire, so we fled. This news spread in the village, and people began to be confused by Mon Hashem and praised his honesty and trust in God. The lion's mother was completely lost, but he did not return to the forest. They were hiding during the day. At night, they go around your house. "He is a guard," said Hashem al-Fatma. "My opinion is that with his presence, God makes blessings surround us, and whenever we get it, it is thanks to gratitude." But Fatima was not satisfied and said, "Do you want to say that all this is because of him?" "Not by your effort, not by your effort, by the grace of this animal." Hashem Bado said that nothing weans. It is just a cause and the real actor is God, and if he wills, he will appear and his mercy will come to me through a snitch. These words entered Fatima Qasim's heart, as they indicated that Hashem had become more calm and steadfast than before. This change did not please her, and that night when Sham took her to the mosque, Fatima approached. From the hut and looking at the lion, he was silent, as if he knew that his trial had not ended. She closed the door and then thought, and a conspiracy plan that remained silent appeared in her heart. 10 to get rid of this animal, but fate had written this freedom. It will come at a price, and there will be a rainy night, and the village will be afflicted with winds. A shadow was moving outside Beth Akim, that lion who was no longer just an animal in Angria. By morning, they were guards and over the course of days, he became familiar with them, as if he had found some new awareness. During the day, he would lie down at Hashem's bed, and in the dark of the night he would walk around the house with his butt. With his presence, the house was not safer. Only with innovations did calmness and blessings come into my life, Hashem. The plant was no longer spoiled, nor was the rain damaging it. It was sold quickly in the market and for a good car. And Fahim, a resident of the village, used to say, "Yabab Hashim, God has placed a special blessing in your rice, so that your firewood has a pleasant smell." So Khan Hashim answered, "This is all from God's grace and gift. He mourns the teacher whoever he wants and whatever he wants," but Fatima's heart became more and more distressed. Then it became clear that her husband was getting closer to Assad and that all the goodness and peace was because of him. He was envious of the hostility and neglect, as if it had become unimportant. One night, after he had eaten food for the lion raised his head towards the sky and let out a strange roar. It was not anger, but rather there was a strange sparkle in his eyes, as if he knew that something bad was coming, as if he realized the danger that was hidden in this house. Fatima saw this from the window, and a fire of hatred rose in her heart. She said to herself, "This lion has fought me and my husband." If he had turned away, she might have counted it as a sniffle, as he loved me and cared for me. On the water day, she bought meat from the market and mixed a little ghee in it, from my medicine, which had been harvested in Aran. She did not fully realize what she was doing, or perhaps she realized, but envy clouded her insight. It was the night of Udaya, and Hashim was in the mosque. Fatima calmly lowered the door of the shed, and the lion looked at her without showing any reaction. She placed the meat in front of him and closed the door. She returned after a few moments. The lion smelled the meat and ate it. He was going to eat it, and he began to cry faintly. He was learning, but he did not recover. Fatima stood on the meat, sulking. There was a strange stillness on her face, as if she was rejoicing in victory, but the lion did not run away, nor did he attack slowly outside. He groaned in pain and sat in a corner of the courtyard, embracing the moon, and his eyes were fixed, and he was accustomed to smelling his branch in this state. So he rushed to him to touch his body, and he was very hot and said, "Oh God, what happened to him?" The lion raised his vision. He paused a little and looked at Hashim's eyes, as if he had a smile of gratitude, as if he was saying, "I have protected you, and now complete them with your own affection." Then he lowered his head and passed away silently at his foot. Tears ran down Hashim, and he placed his hand on his head and said, "You were not just an animal. I was his guardian, and I was my guardian." Fatima was standing far away, her face quickly turned. In my side of the death was a call from someone who was faint, and in the last culprit was a feeling of intense victory, but she did not know that this was not a victory in the first place for a daughter. In the ending that I wrote for her, the lion's body was lying at Hashim's feet, overwhelmed by the sound of the moon, and Hashim's hands were drying up, and on his face was a sadness that could not be described in words, that animal that people call a monster. The eyes of the people love his loyalty and her Samita service, but in her house, Hashim remains the remains of a single, closed eye, which is the eye of Fatima, a veil of the lion's body. It appears that in the white shroud, he dug a hole in the corner of the courtyard and buried him with his own hands. There was no crying and screaming. Rather, there was a humility on his shoulders similar to prostration. He put his hand on his grave and said, "You are gone, but you are in the hands of Hashim." She blamed me for a lesson that humans had not taught me. Fatima was watching from afar, with some worry on his face, but she did not remain in this feeling for long. The next morning, while she was cleaning, it was done well. He died. Namin got rid of the trouble in my family and did not search for my meat. Now the gift will return to the house. He raised his head and looked at her and said, It was as if Yaram had seen a strange woman, and he said, "I have buried Al-Hudwa, which they were guarding, and in which God's mercy was." She said sarcastically, "Oh, have you become sad for the lion? He has become more important to you than humans." Hashim did not answer. He knew that some answers would be given to time, but time was not too late. The following week, the blessing began to disappear from Hashim's house. The firewood began to burn, the rain was drenching it, its prices fell in the market, and the blessing vanished from his hands. The callous appeared on Hashem's face, and he used to spend his nights in the mosque. He prayed, "O Lord, if there was any negligence in my action, forgive me. And if he had committed a mistake in your prayer, forgive me, make me prostrate to you, and breastfeed me." As for Fatima, she started blaming him for everything and said, "See, all the good was because of that lion. I used to tell you that, you are the one who brought the blessing, and now without him you have nothing." On the day of the water, Hashem Bado asked Fatima, "Did you make him fat?" Your question was a dagger in her heart. Her eyes trembled, but her tongue remained full of stubbornness, and she said, "If she had gotten emotional, at least I would have stayed alone. That animal stole your heart and served your love." This was his confession and the final limit for the patient Hashem. He got up silently and went to the mosque. He sat there for long hours. His heart was present to his Lord, and on his tongue was one sentence: "O God, the wife of Aksad has reached the heights of disbelief, she is killing ostriches with poison, and now the decision is yours, so show me your justice, and Camus will respond to her." The swelling appeared on his face, and her body was afflicted with permanent pain and vomiting. What is worse is that his tongue, which had not been silent, became without a trace. The women of the village came to visit her and burst into tears as they destroyed snakes and brought Adani to Mayudi until he was tired of me. Fatima, the righteous woman, placed her hand on her head and said, "Fatima, you have abandoned gratitude and embraced greed. And bring on yourself the light of God's mercy. If you do not repent, what will keep you will go away." Fatima's first look at herself in a woman. For a moment, the beautiful woman who was proud of her appeared with dark circles, yellowness, and wrinkles of pain. However, her heart did not completely soften. Rather, she was only thinking about how to get her back. Smell how to find something new with their attention. She did not want love with the will to win a battle. Is she a loser? As for Hashem, the place shone. Something had broken in it, and perhaps something new had been born in it, a new identity and a new path. The light of the village dimmed, and the alleys of Hokiani, which were following the memories of Fatima's stories, became witness to her groaning after the death of the lion. Santhishem increased day after day. He used to stay up all night and they would sleep in the mosque, with Ali and a pillow on the floor. There was no sleepiness in his eyes, but rather a question that a person asks himself when God shows him what he has chosen. I smell the perfect sound with Fatima, to the words of reproach, to complain, with a heavy symbol like a kakab. This two horns began with Hash Fatma, and she remembered the days when he used to call her with a glance. They smiled at her and he endured her ups and downs, but she realized that it was all over with her own hands, and on the day of the water, Shammun stopped her at the door with a bag in his hands, and in front of him was the village sheikh, Maulana Tayyab. Fatima was watching from behind the door. He said to her, "Sham ya Maulana." She made a big decision in the name of a woman who killed God's grace with poison. We come back, I can continue this for Baltlak. I decided to get married again, but this time on the basis of shukri, righteousness, and sabbat. Maulana Bado said, "This is a heavy decision, Ya Hashim, but if your heart has been broken and you are in Taksafiyya, then God is the witness to your knowledge." Then Fatima's slogan was as if the ground was companionship beneath her feet, and her body trembled and she fell backwards. It is as if her mind was not equal to the sounds of Tamzaj in the village mosque, and the new wives were Rubina Maluma in the orphan school, and the faces of Hamanur, her speech polite, and her heart filled with gratitude. When she entered her house, he smelled the cleanliness of the floor and a verse from the Quran on the wall, and on the first night she prayed, "O God, make this house blessed." Fatima was in the corner of the room in pain, hearing Rubina's voice becoming more agitated, and hearing Tashash's laughter from the one who returned and was in even more pain. For the first time, she felt true unity with support in the eyes. Then the time came when the villagers' view of her changed, and no one sympathized with her anymore or respected her. Everyone realized that her efforts, arrogance, and cruel words were what destroyed her house with her own hands. She began to become more and more sick day by day. The radiance of her face disappeared, and her eyes were filled with loneliness, and flight remained rich in her presence until nights later, she saw in a dream the lion coming out of his grave and standing in front of her. His face was red, but this face said, "I was not just an animal, but I was the decision of your lot. You killed a means of God, so God left you one." Fatima woke up kicking a rook and her body was drowning. "Stand up in the Arabs." She called Hashim, but there was Arabina in their room. Her voice started bouncing off the walls. In the morning, Rabin saw her condition, so she called Hashim. The doctor came, but he said, "This body does not want to die. Rather, it is in spiritual torment. It does not need medicine, but rather repentance." Fatima said, "Hashim, forgive me, I have betrayed you, I have betrayed the lion, and I have betrayed my Lord." Hashim said, "Anbidu, my heart has been broken and God's mercy has been returned. I may have harmed it, but forgiveness with God comes only through sincere repentance." She kept crying and clutching her hand at his feet, but time did not turn back. It was a winter morning that was sighing, as if the whole universe was waiting for the right of the one in whose room Hashim was, an Arab woman listening to the recitation of the Quran. On the other side was the room in which Fatima lived, and it was covered with manure. She was lying down, her body weak and his eyes sunken. And her mouth was intermittent, as if life was leaving her. She was a servant who served her all day long, giving him medicine and giving her medicine. Oh God, if she fought, he would forgive him, and if she did not, her heartache was heartbreaking, God's atonement. Fatima's tears were flowing and she said, "I lost because of my disbelief. I did not know God's mercy. The lion was not just an animal, but it was my portion. You gave me your love, your dignity, and your home, and before my efforts were exhausted today, I would only ask for a supplication, may God forgive me, so forgive me also." Hashim's eyes brought tears to her eyes and he said in this voice, "Your Eminence Fatima, but I know that Mushkar loses both dignity and mercy." And that night, the invisible rain began to fall. Her anfas stopped without screaming, without noise, just the silence of the end. Hashim washed her, and buried her in the village cemetery, and no one cried, as if nature itself had issued the ruling. Rabin said that night, "Your patience saved you, and her efforts destroyed her, so Hashim knocked, you have thanked me for your generosity." Thus, the thanksgiving granted Hashim a life full of blessings, while the efforts took away from Fatima everything that was hers. Condolence resignation. From which country are you watching this video? What do you think of this story? Share your opinions in the comments and subscribe to our channel. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in another story.